Wasn't really planning on doing a live stream today, but I was at work today talking with the head guy who does the buying for the yard. For those of you who don't know, I work at a lumber yard. I do retail sales for a living. And just kind of talking to him about some of the things that need to be ordered for the yard. And I was asking him about the half-inch CDX, which is probably the most common plywood that we sell here out of our yard. Now, if you're not familiar with plywood or, some of the other building materials that are out there, half-inch CDX is probably, like I said, the most common plywood sheathing that you can get. There's one out there that is far more common, and that's OSB. So like oriented strand board is what it stands for. So if you can imagine, if you were sheathing a house or building a new home, you got the skeleton, but then you got the sheathing that goes on the outside of it, the skin before all the doors, windows, siding goes in. OSB and half-inch CDX are the two most common forms of plywood that you would see on this type of framing. But lately, we've had issues with the plywood, now in lumber as well. So when I say issues, it's not like issues that are so like difficult to deal with that, it's like big time news or something like that. It's not issues like that. They're just small things that come up every once in a while that you just can't order like you would typically would. For example, like 2x12s, 2x12 KD, standing and better, 12s, 16s, 14s, the common middle lengths, right? The ones like right in the middle there between 20s and in the shorts have come up in short supply, where you just couldn't just order them and get them. You had to wait like a week or two to get these things to come in, which again, this is a sign of like there being low inventory out there. Typically when you would order one of these units, you would get it within a week or so. Now, last month, we were reporting on some of the shortages that were occurring within the lumber industry. In fact, I was talking about how there's so much curtailment taking place within the mills around here that the byproduct, the pulp that comes from these mills, is now coming up short supply for the wood burning pellets, like the wood pellets for heating your home, the fuel pellets. Those things are now coming up in short supply because of that byproduct coming from the mills that's in short supply due to the fact of all the curtailments that are happening. So it's starting to show itself. And again, like about a month ago, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, we were reporting on the OSB market, and this is one of the things that it was saying within the report that I was reading. Because for those of you who don't know, I get a letter that kind of gives me an email that tells me what's kind of going on throughout the different regions of the area of the United States, and it kind of tells about the different areas. OSB had this to say: extended order files from every mill in every reporting zone. Most mill order files are well into September, and remember, they're shipping late. So this was a month ago that they were talking about how orders, when you typically order, you would get it in like say 1 to 2 weeks. That's an order file, how far out they go. OSB was all the way out until September. And again, this was in the beginning of August when I was reading this report. So now here we're starting to find how plywood is coming up in short supply. So today I went to the buyer and I said, hey man, we're got a few units here of, some stuff that we need. He says, yeah, it'll all be in tomorrow except for the half-inch CDX. And I was like, well, what's going on with that? He says, I can't find it anywhere. Nobody has any half-inch CDX 5-ply. There's 4-ply available, right? So we could get the 4-ply, but the 5-ply, the one with, if you're not familiar with plywood, they have different veneers that are glued together. The 4-ply isn't as strong as the 5-ply. Everybody wants to use the 5-ply because it's a better product, and it's coming up in incredibly short supply. I have no idea when we're going to get those units in, but the fact that it is in short supply right now is telling me that once we do get our hands on it, the prices are going to be moving up. So this is where I'm kind of saying, putting the word out there for those who are following this channel for the lumber report and the building supply industry. I would not hesitate on getting your plywood. Even if you have people who have plenty of stock available for it, what you're going to find is if there's shortages happening in places like in my area, that the prices are going to start moving up, and the demand will be there, and then the prices will start moving up. Even if you have an area that is abundant with plywood, the industry-wide is going to start causing the prices to move up on a lot of this stuff. Now, I haven't seen it move into the other sizes, like say 3/4 or 5/8 or something like that. Right now, I'm only finding it in the half-inch CDX, But when you think about like OSB, the oriented strand board, that being the cheaper product, my yard really hasn't even stocked that stuff since the pandemic. So like for the last 3 years, I think we've maybe brought in 2 units, where typically you would bring in, maybe 20, 30 units a year or even more, depending on how much you're going through it. But right now we're going through like, way more half-inch CDX and 4-ply than we are OSB, because we just simply can't get the OSB. And if we did, we would have to charge so much for it that nobody would ever buy it from us. So anyway, I definitely wanted to come out here today to give you that lumber report, just to kind of give you an idea of what I'm seeing here within the plywood industry, knowing that half-inch CDX is by far the most common plywood that you could ever possibly buy out there. And being in short supply of it, I know that the prices are going to start moving up here. Again, a lot of this is going to also depend on the demand coming from the home builders, which still hasn't quite popped to the level that I thought it might have, considering that it was summer. But the home buyer traffic, that's what's really holding them back. I mean, if the home buyer traffic was to increase and turn into a positive territory, then I think that the lumber prices would probably not, I wouldn't go in to say skyrocket, but they would definitely move up in an extreme fashion, considering the amount of curtailments, evidence of shortages that I'm seeing, and then issues like this plywood coming up. It's just a matter of time as far as I'm concerned. Okay, let's talk about OC. I've been out here 6 minutes now. I don't plan on being out here too late, maybe about a half an hour or so, but I figure we could talk about some lumber issues, talk about the building supply industry. Where is this? There we go. I need these. Okay. I'm interested in the zip sheathing you described. Zip sheathing? Yeah, I wish more people around here would use that particular product. It's new to, like, it's not new. It's a product that's been out for a while, but when you're in an area like I am and you have a lot of like kind of old time builders, they don't like to change. They don't like new products. They don't like to, they don't like to switch it around and stuff. But zip sheathing is a really great idea because it pretty much eliminates the need for a vapor barrier. So typically you would put up a plywood or OSB and then you would have to wrap the house with a vapor barrier. Zip sheathing kind of already comes with it installed. So all you have to do is just put up the plywood or, nail up your sheathing, and then you tape the seams. You put this tape over the top of the seams and then you're good to go, which is like, talk about expediting the process. Holy moly. All right, hit the like button. Yeah, thank you very much, Brandon. All right, you uneducated economist, my favorite to catch live. Thanks for the concise explanation of the fundamentals for economic theories. Yeah, you bet, man. Those 4 economic theories, I mean, the more I look at the articles and the things that I read and the things that I hear out there, it aligns more and more up with those particular theories. If you're not familiar with the theories that I was referring to, Cantillon effect, Gresham's law, Triffin's dilemma, and the bullwhip effect. And if you kind of like wrap your mind around those 4 type of economic theories, and then start looking at like a lot of the news articles you find, or you're listening to the news out there, and you're going to find that a lot of times what they are talking about is one of those 4 theories. Pretty interesting, All right. Is that a beer? No, it's mineral water. I don't drink beer. Well, I drink non-alcoholic beer. All right. Oh, West Rock shut down in Tacoma. Nippon burned in Longview. West Rock Longview is rejecting chips. Local lumber mills having issues getting rid of residuals. Need wood pellets. Go to the forest energy. Columbia City, Oregon. New car? No, it's not a new car. It's an old car. It was my parents' car. They gave it to me. It's a 98 Ford Explorer, but it has 92,000 miles on it, and I don't think the back seat has ever been sat in. All right, 15 likes, thumbs up, folks. Yes, please, hit the thumbs up. I'm here. We can start now. Good to see you, all-nighter. So buy the 6x6s I need. Yeah, lumber right now, well, beams I haven't had too much issue with as far as ordering them. Right now, it's like the 2x12, 2x10, and then now like this plywood and OSB. Those have been like the major issues. There's been a couple of times that I tried to order some pressure treated that I kind of ran into some issues, but it wasn't very long. Like it was like I might have not have been able to get it this week, but I would got it the following week. And then I didn't have any more issues with that particular size. So like every once in a while on the pressure treated, there would be a hit and miss on what I could order. But for the most part, I can get just about everything that I've ordered. I haven't had anybody tell me that, you know, they didn't have it available or they didn't have it available fairly quickly. Yeah. All right. I'm new to this. All right. Well, I'm glad to see you here, man. You know, learning all about this stuff is like, you know, I'm coming more and more to the understanding that, you know, the economy is all how you see it and how you interact with it. Like a lot of times people say good economy, bad economy. I don't understand that anymore, because really if it's a good economy or bad economy is more about the position that you have taken considering the moment that we're in right now. So when people say a bad economy, I think that's just because they weren't expecting some of the things that are taking place, or they've positioned themselves in a way that they get hurt by the effects of the economy. But a good economy, bad economy, it's just an economy. You just got to know what's going on and how to position yourself for it. It's not really up to somebody else to try and come up with an idea of what the economy should look like so that it benefits us, right? That's not the way it works, right? You know, we need to figure out what's going on in the economy so we can benefit us, not try and say, hey, I need to vote for this person, or that guy needs to be in charge, or this guy needs to be booted out, or something like that. All those are externals that you'll always be like frustrated with what's going on, because you always have, you know, this idea on what's going on the external. Once you kind of understand the economy for yourself and understand the positions that you have taken and what it is that you need to do, it really alleviates a lot of pain out there as far as like how come the way things are the way they are. Like you don't question that anymore. It's more like, hey, things are this way and I need to react to that, you know, and deal with it in an appropriate fashion. All right. Stimulate the like, please. Yes, please do. Thank you. In my area, there's not much new building going on. The Fed has stopped this thing cold. Yeah, maybe in that, but like if you go and you look at like new starts, like new residential starts and building permit issuance, and you're going to see like right now, well, I haven't checked it like this week, but I mean, last time I checked it, it was doing better now than any time prior to the pandemic, right? I mean, it was just like during the pandemic, it really shot up. There was a lot of people who were looking to, you know, move out of the city and move into into the country or build a house of their own or whatever. But the permit issuance and new starts are quite elevated considering where we were prior to the pandemic. So I mean, where that exactly is taking place, I'd imagine it's probably concentrated in a few areas, considering like even I myself am not seeing like that high demand for lumber in the building industry or new homes through the building supply. I haven't seen it, like not like we were back in like say 2017, 18. Things were really rocking and rolling back then. But you know, and even going into 2019, it was towards the end of 2019 that things really slowed down dramatically. Yeah. All right. Are you in the Astoria area? I am. And right out there is the Columbia River. So, yeah. All right. Thanks on that. Lumber mills are having trouble getting rid of. Oh, we already read that one. Okay. That is why they are slowing down in Washington. They're having trouble getting rid of the residuals. So that's what I heard too. Like they actually slowed down because they couldn't get rid of that byproduct. Like I heard that as well, but now I'm starting to wonder, like I heard that back when there was paper mill issues. Like the paper mills weren't operate, but that was like I heard that was an issue from before. I didn't hear that one happening right now. So I'm going to have to check that one out again, because I did hear about that as well. Like there was a bunch of paper mills that weren't producing, or there was some issues with it and they had slowed down dramatically and they started building up on that pulp and they were like, man, we can't get rid of this stuff. I do remember that story, but I haven't heard that one lately. So I'll have to maybe I'll have to research that. Yeah. All right. Do you have a LSD story? LSD, like acid? What's your advice for people with trees? Cut them now or hold for higher prices? Trees are a little bit different because the things about, like, a lot of people look at the lumber industry and they saw the lumber prices running way up and they were like, hey, this is obviously manipulation, because go and look at the timber prices. The trees, the logs themselves, they aren't fetching the high price like the lumber prices are getting. So obviously there's a manipulation taking place, but lumber isn't exactly, like, the lumber industry and the timber industry aren't exactly correlated together. Like, it seems like it should be, but they're not. And the main reason that they're not correlated is because timber is a major exporting product. Like, we ship a lot of trees out of the United States, like raw logs going to, Japan, China, wherever, right? There's a lot of raw logs that leave the United States. And so when we had like the trade wars kicking in, right? And China was giving us the finger on logs. They were like, hey, man, we don't want your logs. We're going to get them from Russia now. There was a huge slowdown in the amount of exporting of logs, which really dropped the price. And that was right before the lumber prices had shot up because of the inventory depletion that had taken place. So at the same time, there was an inventory depletion taking place within the lumber industry. There was also a, like, severing of partnerships when it came to the exporting of logs. Now, a lot of that has been reestablished since then, but at the time, there was like a lot of logs piled up here in the United States that didn't have a place to go to, and there was also a lot of mill curtailments happening at the same time. So it makes a lot of sense why the timber prices weren't keeping up with the lumber prices, because really the timber prices is more about exports than it is necessarily about the demand for lumber here in the United States. Prices are high, buyer traffic low, so why aren't builders lowering their prices to increase traffic? Why aren't they lowering their prices? It's probably because all the added input cost of going into a house, right? I mean, just because the lumber prices came down does not mean the entire price of the entire house has come down, right? Lumber makes up something like, well, I mean, I guess when lumber ran up to its all-time high, it was probably a lot more. But lumber doesn't make up, but what, maybe 25, 30% of the entire house. And that's when lumber was at its all-time high. So when it drops dramatically, the input cost of the framing part of it is down. But then all the rest of it, like the siding, the doors, the windows, all the rest of the stuff, the roofing and all that stuff is still quite elevated. So just because the lumber portion of it has come down, that's only bringing out just a little bit of the input costs. I mean, it's significant, but it's not the majority of it. Like, everything else is still elevated prices, All right. Did I get a super chat down there? I did. Mark, thank you so much for the $4.99. How did the picnic table build go? Oh man, thanks for asking about that. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, so I built the picnic table. Here, this is kind of interesting. I just used regular 2x6 standard and better KD lumber, but I picked through it and I picked out the nicest pieces, so there's not a whole lot of knots or anything in it. I paid retail prices for everything, right? Including the screws and all that. So I ended up buying 9 2x6 10-footers. I didn't want to buy the 10-footers, but they were the nicest looking lumber because I only wanted 6-foot pieces. So I was going to get 12s, but the 12s were just too ugly. So I went with the 10-footers and I cut them down to 6 feet. So I had a bunch of 4-foot pieces left over. So between the 9 2x6 10s, the 3 2x4 12s, and the 3 2x4 8s, and the 2 pounds of 3-inch screws. I can't remember what the exact bill was, but it was somewhere right around $120 for all that. And I was able to build the picnic table, a 4-foot bench, and a 2-foot bench out of all that material. And I'll take a picture of it. I'll put it on the community page later on. But I guess the idea behind that is that one could probably sell that picnic table fairly cheap and still do okay, like say 350, 400 bucks, I don't know, somewhere around there. And not bad for an afternoon's worth of work. You can make like 200 bucks, you know. How you get it delivered, I'm not sure after it's assembled, if you don't have a truck or something like that. But, you know, I mean, if it was not assembled and you had all the pieces cut and ready to go, you could just take it to a site and just assemble it on site. But yeah, anyway, it turned out really nice. I'll take a picture of it and I'll put it on the community page for you. But I thought that was a good idea, so I thought I might make a video about that. Like, you know, could you really just go to just about any lumber yard across the nation and with say about 120 bucks or 150 bucks buy all the material that you would need to build a picnic table and sell the picnic table, see if you can make money at it, you know. And the picnic table design that I have is really easy. There's nothing to it, you know. All right, thanks for asking. That was a good question. What's your, okay, we did that. Prices are high, buyer traffic low, okay. Will there be a housing crash? I don't think so. I don't think there's going to be a housing crash. The only thing that I think would bring on a housing market crash is if we saw some serious like unemployment rising, right? People basically not able to make their house payments anymore. That's when I would think that lumber prices, or I'm sorry, that there would be a market crash. Because everything else is just like, there's nothing else that's going to point towards evidence of that. The home builders aren't overbuilding, right? There's not like there's a bunch of toxic mortgages sitting in the system like there was back in '08. The only thing that's really like got everybody lit up was the fact that there was a very low amount of inventory. And if there's low inventory, prices are going to move up in a dramatic fashion. So those prices being incredibly elevated is really the main thing that has people going, this is too far, it needs to come back down. I mean, obviously, if you have these ultra high prices, at some point, you're going to have a relief to that. But that's the only thing I really hear. Like, I mean, there's a lot of times, you know, somebody will say like, you know, no, there's going to be all these foreclosures in the system. Why? Where are they going to come from, right? They got to come from unemployment, people losing their jobs. And although we have a lot of layoffs taking place in the system, there's still service industry jobs out there that, although they don't pay a great amount, they are a job and they do provide income. So, you know, it's like, until the unemployment rises, I just don't see where the housing market crash is going to come from. And even if unemployment did rise, you have to think, okay, how long does it take for a house to go into foreclosure after you stop making your payments? And if you have a wave of that coming in, then it's going to take ever increasingly more time to go through all those foreclosures. Okay, so there is this big wave of foreclosures and people going to, you know, losing their jobs or whatever in 2 years down the road from now, right? Where a lot of times these things finally come up to auction and stuff. Well, who's to say where interest rates are going to be at by that point, and whether or not you're going to be able to refinance, or what kind of schemes they come up with to keep people in their homes and keep the prices from crashing to earth again. There's a lot of what ifs inside of that whole scenario. But to me, again, it's whether or not people are going to be able to make their payments. That comes down to unemployment. If unemployment rises, we can look at it in a little different fashion. But until then, I just don't know. I just don't see it, you know. All right. In my opinion, not a crash, but a correction. Crash being down 20% in a year. Yeah, and I mean, like, even my house, I mean, think about this. There was a time I looked at the ZELLE estimate on my house and it was ridiculous. It was like, I don't know, like almost $200,000 more than what I had paid for it. I mean, and this is like, I've only been in my house for a year and a half, right? And it was an expensive house because I live in an expensive area, but it's not like my house is something really amazing and awesome and deserves to have a $200,000, added on to the price of it. That's ridiculous, right? So from that number, it's dropped like a lot. 25%, 20% or something like that from that high number, which was ridiculous and probably not accurate to begin with. Where it sits today is still quite elevated from where I paid for it. And then even if it was to drop significantly from here, like even 20% from the spot that it is right now, I still would not be underwater from the fact that they made me put 10% down on my house. So again, I have to ask, like, how much would the prices have to come down in order for people to go completely underwater or to start going into the process of like abandoning their mortgage and saying, I don't want this house anymore, I'm going to let it fall into foreclosure? The prices would have to come down quite significantly, right? Because of how much they have gone up over the last year. I mean, there was a lot of people who purchased in the last year and a half, but not like that many, right? There's a handful, there's a bunch of houses out there. Most of that all took place prior to the pandemic, or not pandemic, but prior to the last, what am I trying to say? Prior to the interest rates hiking, right? Causing the mortgage rates to go up. Most of those homes were purchased before that. So again, people are sitting in 3.25% or less, interest rates like me. Like that's what I got on my house was 3.25%. I will do everything I can to hold on to that house, including taking on roommates or doing whatever. Like I will not let that house go into foreclosure or anything happen to it. But I'm not anywhere near that, so I'm not stressing that kind of thing. And I'd imagine a lot of people are still sitting in that position. So housing market crash? No, I think that's wishful thinking for people who are like hoping to buy a house for cheap. And here's another thing about that. How many people are doing that? Like, what is the pool of people sitting on the sidelines with cash waiting to buy a cheap house? How many people are out there like that? Like, how many houses would you have to have come down in order to fulfill that demand of people who are waiting, right? Because as soon as a house comes down to like even a remotely decent price, boom, it gets nabbed up, right? So it's not like this wave of houses are going to come in. Every time one comes down to what seems reasonable, it's going to get nabbed up right away because there's so many people who are waiting to do that. So competition for buying a house is incredibly tough, right? For buying a cheap house, I should say. All right, moving on. If things stay as they are now, barring no black swans, yeah. All right, the world is truly run by words. Believe wisely. I'm guessing 10-15% a year, but I'm also guessing things don't stay as they are now. Sorry to be confusing. All right. If the housing prices are so high, then it makes better sense to just build new. Yeah, it does. But, building new is expensive. Like, I talk to people who build houses for themselves. Like, I work with a couple who come in, like, hey, we're building a house and whatever. And by the time the house is done, they've had it. They have so had it. If you are not prepared to build a house, or if you're not quite sure what you're doing, or this is like, not something that you've done before or whatever, it can be a very stressful, hard thing to get done. Especially nowadays, because there's so much permitting and issues and, codes and everything else that goes with it. It makes it very difficult to just like casually just build a house like with fun in mind. It's like it's hard business. Yeah. But people do it all the time. I mean, people do it all the time, so it's not like it's unheard of, that's for sure. I mean, I'm not trying to discourage anybody from building their own stuff. If you have a hammer and a saw and you got the drive, go for it, man. Make it happen. Yui, if you built a house, what would be your preference in insulation? Foam board, spray foam, or roll fiberglass? Um, I don't know. Probably like the spray foam seems to be a pretty good deal. I don't see a lot of that happening in my area, so there must not be a lot of like. I imagine they come down from Portland if they're going to do it. So I mean, fiberglass rollout insulation seems to be the popular one around here. Works pretty well. I would do like a blow-in insulation, a real thick blow-in insulation up in the attic. That's what I have like at my house, and it's thick. Like I got a thick layer of blow-in insulation in the roof. It's like way more than needs to be up there. But you can tell it makes it for a fairly efficient house. I have a heat pump that runs the house for both heating and cooling, and it's nice, man. I mean, my house it's always 76 degrees, like 78 degrees, depending on what I set it at. But it's always the same temperature all the time. Um, so I guess in my opinion, I'd probably stick with the roll fiberglass insulation just because, I don't know, that's I guess what I'm used to. But there's probably better products out there. All right, I'm working on a deck right now. Very cool. All right. Rock's wool insulation. Yeah, rock wool insulation is by that's a good one. People who come in looking for it will ask for it by name and won't accept anything else. So yeah, I would yeah, if you go with Rock's wool, I think that's a great product. Great insight. Time to stock up on valuable resources on sale. Turn assets into bigger assets using your hands. Great idea. Yeah. I couldn't be in retail sales for wood. The jokes I would tell about selling my wood would get me in trouble. Yeah, it's always it's always some good jokes to be told about that. Picnic table market gonna blow up into a bubble. Yeah, it is. Everybody's gonna run out and buy $100 worth of 2x6s and start building picnic tables. For a housing crash to happen, people need to sell their homes. For them to sell, they need a place to go. They can't afford to move. We'll see the commercial markets impacted this round. Yeah. Brian, the jokes would get you enough sales to make up for any complaints of selling to contractors and not grandmas. Right? All right, I want to see your tattoos. Yeah, everybody wants to see the tattoos. All right, I'll show you the tattoos. I won't show you all of them, but I'll show you the ones on my arm. So this one I got in Hawaii, right? Bamboo. It was pretty cool. The guy, his name was Baker, right? Greg, I think Greg Baker was his name. And it was pretty cool. So it was on Kauai that I had it done. And I told him, I said, dude, I would like some bamboo on the back of my arm. And he was like, bamboo, you got a picture or anything? And I was just like, no. And so we were kind of looking at a picture in a magazine. And he was like, I think I could freehand that. It was by far the fastest tattoo. I have 5 tattoos, right? 5, yeah. And this one was by far the fastest tattoo I had ever had done. From the time that he took a ballpoint pen and he drew a few lines, right? And he just drew a few lines out there and then started slinging the ink. And I kid you not, I don't think he spent more than 35 minutes tattooing this on me, right? I mean, it was like incredible, right? Pretty good work, I thought too. You know what's funny is my youngest boy, Freddie, he thought it was corn. He thought it was a corn, like literally like a corn plant. I had to tell him, no, dude, it's bamboo, man. Yeah, so anyway, thought that was pretty funny. Now this one over here, I got this one in Seaside from a lady, Brandy, and got the lion done. And she did an incredibly good job on that. I'm not getting a really good angle on it right here, but she did an amazing job. And that one was done off of a photograph of a lion. So pretty good stuff. And I got those, it's been years and years ago. I got the lion like, geez, I've been 15 years ago, I guess. I got that lion done. And then the bamboo was, yeah, about that too. It was about 12 years ago, I guess. All right. Let's see here. Crazy. I see more or less isolated to commercial real estate too, Patrick. Yeah. Well, like, what I find interesting is that we have a huge apartment complex just not too far from, I can almost see the roof from where I'm sitting right now. And it stopped. Like all work on it has stopped. Like they were going crazy on it for months. Like they're building this thing up and now there's nobody on site. Nothing's being done. It's been this way for like over a month now, probably 2 months, that it's been completely quiet. And I started asking questions. Like I thought, maybe like there was something going on, like they were waiting for, I don't know, whatever, some other kind of subcontractors or something going on in there. But there's like nobody. Like the site is completely empty. And so I started asking about it. I'm like, what's going on with it? And it was just like, oh, I heard they ran out of money during the pandemic. So basically they had started this project and was building it when lumber prices had ran up to the all-time high and got caught on high materials and just couldn't finish it. And so now it sits there, I guess in limbo, waiting for somebody to probably buy it out or whatever it is, whatever's got to happen to it. So I'm imagining like how many of those type of projects are spanning across the country. We got one right here in the middle of Astoria, right? Okay. I think we're going to see mass insolvency in commercial real estate, apartments on commercial loans. Yeah, very much. I mean, this is a prime example of just that, you know. And I wish I had more inside information, but I don't want to really speak out of like, speak out of turn here, because I just don't know enough information about that. So. All you need is a job loss and wham, yeah. Trying to refinance a light commercial apartment is impossible due to interest rates and rent rolls not meeting the minimum debt service ratio. You can only for up rents so far to meet the DSCR. Yeah. Foreclosure stats are misleading too. Reporting on foreclosure notices, which is just a communication. Trustee sales are the finalizing of a foreclosure. That's what to follow. What people don't realize is $5,000 mortgage isn't a lot for most people. That's what quarter of the average monthly salary for 90% of Americans. What people don't realize is $5,000 mortgage isn't a lot for most people. That's what quarter of an average monthly salary for 90% of Americans. Are you thinking that 90% of Americans earn $10,000 a month? That's like insane. Like, no way. I think 90% of Americans earn probably $5,000 a month if they're lucky. I mean, it's so funny. For somebody who's earned, like when you talk to people who earn like say $100,000 a year, right? They know like it's not that much money. Like $100,000 is a lot of money. Like it's a lot of money, right? But if you're living in like San Francisco, it ain't nothing. That ain't like who would want to live in San Francisco right now? But you get what I'm at. If you're in a high expensive area, then 100,000 really isn't that much money, right? But then if you think about like earning $100,000 and then you think about like what other people earn out there, you think like it's not too far off from 100,000. Like, well, maybe I earn 100,000, but maybe somebody who works down there at the lumber yard probably earns like $60,000-$70,000 a year, not realizing that they earn more like $40,000 a year, right? Or even $35,000 to $40,000 a year if they're lucky. And so most Americans don't earn shit. Right? They don't earn anything. There's very little income for them. And even if they did earn some, they live in an area where it doesn't do anything for them, right? So it's, most Americans are suffering paycheck to paycheck from one, the area that they live in, and two, jobs just don't pay enough to meet the cost of living or the standard of living. That's why I've said it before, like it's not terribly hard to make it in the United States. Like, there's a lot of jobs out there. You can find places to live. It's hard to make it good, right? It's hard to make living here good. It's not hard to make it. Everybody can make it, right? But then if you want to make it good, you have to have, side hustles. You got to have your own business. You got to have all kinds of things going on in order to make it good, right? But just making it isn't that hard. No, Alex, 90% of Americans are not making $20,000 a month, right? That's what I'm saying. They're like, most are making like $4,000 a month, Prices are outrageous. Millennials are quite rich. A lot of them work in the tech industry, which is successful worldwide. Now they are having kids and buying big houses. Mr. Cheerful, I think you're a little, I imagine there's a bunch of them doing that, but that's not what the generally speaking of millennials is doing. They are having a hell of a time trying to get their shit together in a way that it can find the American dream like, the previous generations have done. Not saying that they aren't doing it. I'm just saying that it's not nearly as much as like, being able to say generally speaking, this is what they're doing, Foam board, then fiberglass, spray foam is not very good. Yeah, I haven't, to be honest, I haven't had a lot of experience with the spray foam. The only thing I really liked about the idea of it is that it could fill in every void. Like you can really do a good good application of it, but anyway. All right, apartments are roads. They are roads because they still paying the long month car payment, so apparently 20,000 a month is reasonable. Huh. Simple 1,800 square foot home in the South is running 300,000. That's total BS. Johnny, that's undervalued, if anything. Yeah, that's what I'm finding out there. I mean, yeah, you're right. It is BS. It shouldn't cost that much, but that's what they cost, right? That's what it is. All right. Lumberjack Landlord has a good video on insulation recommendations and explanations. Oh, yeah. There you go. We should watch that. Around here, framing is about $5 per foot, which is the lowest, but fencing is $7, which is crazy inverted. Rock wool is the best, yeah. Given all the problems with our fiat currency, what would you replace it with if you could? Me? Nothing. Like, what else? What else are you going to use? I mean, it doesn't matter if it's fiat currency or gold or whatever. Go ahead and give me whatever it is that we want to use, and I'll work with that. But it doesn't make any difference, right? It doesn't make any difference what you use. The reason, I mean, it makes a difference for those who may not understand, like how a gold standard will actually drive an industrious nation into luxuries and eventually poverty. Then, the having sitting in a gold standard, I would approve of a gold standard if I was living in an industrious nation that could export more than they import. Then I'd be totally cool with the gold standard. I'd be like, yeah, let's do it, man. Let's make it happen. But as far as the United States, I think that if we went back to a gold standard, we would be like setting ourselves up for poverty almost immediately. So like, I don't want a gold standard for the United States. Like, that's me personally, what I view. Now, I honestly think that the ownership of gold by an individual, like, for you, yourself, and everybody else, the ownership of gold, the personal ownership, I think is very important, silver and gold, to protect yourself from that third party claim, to get yourself out of that, banking industry or whatever. You have something that's yours and to have and to protect your wealth with. But as far as like what I want to have for a currency or like an economy or a banking system or whatever, that's not up for me to decide what it should be. I'm here trying to figure out what's going on so I can best figure out what I need to do with my life. But to try and say that it needs to be in a certain fashion, that's an expectation. That's an external expectation that it'll never be met, right? It'll never be that way. I don't think anybody has the answer to fixing the economy, whatever that's supposed to mean. Like, I don't think anybody has the answer for that. I think that they could come up with a way that the economy could run that would benefit some people and make them happy. You might even be able to do it in a way that makes a lot of people happy, right? But there's no way that you can run an economy or build an economy or have some sort of economic system, banking system, in which that everybody is going to be super happy about it, right? That it just doesn't work like that. So really, again, I think it's more about understanding what's going on within the economy, understanding those four economic theories so that, we can understand what Triffin's, dilemma is and Gresham's law when it comes to like the BRICS nations and the new currency and them setting up trade on their outside of the United States, to understand what these economic theories are, what the laws are, and how that system would be put into place. It shows that there's a very difficult road for that to go down, especially if you understand, if you take in Gresham's law into consideration or even Triffin's dilemma. So when you start looking at it in such fashions, all of a sudden, like, what would you do about the BRICS nation? Nothing, man. There's nothing you need to do about it. Just let them do their thing. I mean, it's an economic force that's going to end up taking place. I mean, there's nothing you can do to change it. What you can do is figure out what it is that it's going to look like and then best position yourself to take advantage of it. That's what you should do, right? Or at least that's what I think you should do. I mean, or that's what I think I should do. All right. Checking in from Georgia. Rarely catch you live. Well, thank you very much, Mark, for being here, man. Some Generation X Inc. Yeah, that's it too, isn't it? It's like old school stuff, right? All right. Silver, brass, lead, whiskey, tobacco, salt, meds, gloves, socks. Hey Simon, made fiberglass insulation for 30 years. Rock wool's the best, mold resistant. Yeah, I agree. Like, I mean, I guess I was thinking like roll out insulation as opposed to spraying insulation or, foam board. But you're absolutely right. I mean, as opposed to fiberglass, the rock wool insulation is by far better. All right. Ask for Waverly ink for your next tat. Ask for Waverly ink. I don't know what that is. Nothing is being done and nothing will get done. It's what it is. I believe 2024 is going to be a very difficult year. I think it's going to be very difficult in the sense that there's going to be liquidity issues coming up here, towards the end of the year and the beginning of next year. I couldn't tell you exactly when, but it seems that there's like the Treasury is getting prepared for it. The Federal Reserve was putting out warnings there to the bank to make sure that their assets are very close to cash, or that they have, the ability to cash out assets and to find liquidity very quickly. Like they know that there's a liquidity issue coming. And that's like, you can't pull. The Federal Reserve is in a quantitative tightening position. They are literally pulling money out of the system right now. Of course, most of it is bank reserves and just digits on a screen, but still, that's them pulling money out of the system. And that's the draw on liquidity, right? That's like the rest of the world is looking for dollars to pay their debts, and if they can't find it, they are going to start selling assets like you wouldn't believe in order to get those dollars. And you could find that asset prices come down dramatically during that time. After 2020, everything's been difficult. Yeah, the economic boom we're in is very hard. Is very hard, huh? I mean, are we really like in an economic boom? I mean, I don't know. Like, I work retail sales for a living. It's not like I see people just pouring into the store, like buying massive amounts of stuff to do projects with. I mean, they do come in. There's quite a bit going on. There was a lot of decks built this summer. A lot of, and what I found is like after the lumber prices ran up as high as they did, composite decking, excuse me, composite decking became very popular. And now, like prior to the pandemic, I would sell like maybe one composite deck for every 3 wood decks that I would sell. Now I sell 1 wood deck for every 3 composite decks I sell. Like almost everybody is switching over to composite. It's crazy. Thanks, Biden crime syndicate. And if Biden don't run shit, yeah, I agree. Who is Biden? Is that guy important? Does he say things that are important? I'm just curious. I haven't ever heard anything he ever said, so I'm not sure if it's important to listen to him or not. All right. I clicked the thumbs up. You should as well. Thank you very much there, Urban X Urban. Don't you already know President-elect? Agreed. The President of the United States is just a face for the people to blame. Most millennials are not having kids or buying homes. Yeah, I don't see that happening. I mean, I imagine that there's probably some doing it, like there's got to be some people out there making that, but not the generally speaking. Like, I don't think that's the ambition of millennials or the, younger generations. What are your thoughts on metal roofing? I have been watching the prices for years and it has not come back down to pre-coronavirus yet, unlike other building products. I agree. I saw a little price relief come out of metal prices. I don't know, maybe like 6 months ago or so. But it was so insignificant. It was like not even noticeable. Like when I saw the price list come in, I'm like, did they change it? And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess there's a few cents off of the, whatever. It wasn't much. I like metal roofing. Like I like the idea of it. I sell quite a bit of it, but most of the time I'm selling it for agricultural, like building barns or the sheds or something like that. As far as residential, there is some residential, projects that use the metal roofing. A lot of it is the standing seam, the concealed fastener stuff. But it can, it is quite expensive. And, I don't know. I guess Maybe it's just because, again, it's like tradition to use it around here, but most people end up putting like, asphalt shingles on their roof. But yeah, I agree. The prices are elevated quite dramatically on metal, and they haven't come down. The average U.S. income is $60,000 a year. Not sure where that 10K is from. Yeah, $60,000 a year. That's average. Like, that's pretty good, right? I mean, that's a pretty good wage. Like for all the jobs and people that I know and everything that work, unless you own a business or you're a professional or something like that, 60,000 is probably about as limited as you're gonna get. Right? I mean, unless you happen to be in a different area or something like that, but just regular average jobs like like my regular day job that I work, it doesn't pay that much, it won't, I can't imagine it ever paying that much. Insulation that does not breathe, sick house, rock wool and mineral paint, magnesium oxide wallboard. Okay, as mortgage loan originator, I know most of the buyers are not millennials. Most are Generation X and boomers, with small few millennials who have help from mommy and daddy. Some basically current owners are trading homes. Let's see here. You guys are talking. Okay, over $5 a gallon for gas is normal in California. Yeah, I think we're like, I don't know, we're around $4.50 a gallon right now where we're at. I'm storing plywood for a rainy day. That's not a bad idea. At least during Trump, we paid less taxes and lower gas prices. He fired a lot of dummies. Well, I tell you what, man. I mean, if you want to look at it that way, then everything that is wrong with your life, I guess you can just go ahead and blame on Biden, and everything that was awesome in your life, you should blame, should give Trump the credit for it. And then everything that you have done for yourself and everything that you have done to cause yourself any kind of damage can then be blamed on that or given credit to, right? So you can give credit to Trump or you can blame Biden for everything that either went great in your life or wrong in your life. And there's your two excuses that you can go with it. I personally am taking all that back for myself. I blame myself for my problems, and then I am expecting myself to do what it is that I need to do in order to take care of my family and myself, right? But I'm not going to wait till some, elected official is up there to give me permission to go ahead and make a better life for myself. I don't need some other one up there saying, hey, we're going to, totally damage your life too, because neither one of those guys are have any kind of consequence to me. I make the decisions for myself, and I do what it is that I need to do for myself, right? I don't put my expectations on an external like that. But we can blame them. I mean, it was just like, hey, man, you're the reasons why I have a crappy life. It's all your fault, and you can just blame it at that person, and then you can just relieve yourself of all those issues, right? Isn't that easy? Know the brand of ink you inject under your skin. It's kind of forever. Yeah, to be honest, I trust the person that's slinging the ink. That's where I kind of, go for it, is like, of course, I haven't always done that. I mean, I guess really the tattoo, the bamboo, is the only tattoo I got from like a stranger, Oh, no, that's not true. I got the one on my leg from Hawaii too. So, no, you're right. I don't know them all. All right. Plywood in good supply in southern Ohio, more coming out of Spain. Spain, Donald would poop a bane. Maybe the solution to these so-called housing affordability crises is simply get rid of fixed rate mortgages. All those people who got low rates should be forced to pay higher rates. Should be forced to pay higher rates just out of the blue? Like you make a deal with somebody that says, hey man, I'm going to borrow money from you for, the next 30 years and we're going to sign this contract and I'm going to pay a particular rate for it. And now you're saying that contract should be just wiped out, saying no, because you made that lifelong decision to sign up for 30 years, now you're going to just pay a hell of a lot more for it because you know what? It isn't fair, right? Well, guess what? Life isn't fair. There's no way in the world that anything in this world will ever be fair. Never. It just doesn't work like that. So it's not a matter of fair, right? It's a matter of understanding the position that you need to be in order to take advantage of whatever it is that's going on at the time. It sucks. Like, I know the feeling of what it is to have lost a house in foreclosure and think that you'll never get another one again. Like, I know that feeling. Like, I came to a point in my life where I just came to the understanding, you won't be a home. You're not going to own a home, man. Just accept it, right? Your kids are going to grow up in somebody else's house that you're going to have to rent, or an apartment or something like that. Accept it. Just, that's just the way it's going to be. And so that was very hard for me to accept, right? And maybe it was something that was buried deep down inside me that says, no, you're not accepting of this. You are doing something about it. You are going to go get a house, and you got to figure out what it is you got to do that. And man, I mean, when it finally came to the time that I was going to get a house, it wasn't a pleasurable experience. It wasn't something that I was having fun at doing, right? It was tearing me up, And then when I finally did get the house, and they said, man, you got it. After all the hell they're trying to come up with a down payment and dealing with the fact that I had a foreclosure in my past and just all the stuff. Like, it was just like one thing after the other, right? It was like, it took everything out of me. When I was finally done, they said, man, you got this house, you did it, man. I was not excited. I went down, I sat on the end of my bed, and I was just like overwhelmed by it all and wasn't excited. I was just like, I was actually somewhat depressed by it. So when most people like plan to buy a house and are excited about getting a house and all this other stuff, I was quite the opposite, right? It wasn't a pleasurable experience for me at all. But I thank God that I got it, right? I think how it is that everything lined up the way it did, like getting booted out of the house, just having just enough money, like literally $42,000 I had to put down on my house. I had $300 left over, right? I had it in my checking account when I was done. Like, everything was lining up to make this happen, and it was almost by force because I didn't really have any other choice. I had to go this, like, I couldn't find an apartment to live. I couldn't find anything. I couldn't, and the only thing that was available was this house, that fit the needs of my family and everything I had going on at the time. It was crazy, Most people don't tell a story like that. Most people are like, oh, we found our dream home. We shopped all over the place. It was a great experience and all this other stuff. And to me, I was just like, I hated it, But after, here it is a year and a half later, and I look back and I'm like, man, for all that stress, all that craziness that was going on at the time, thank God it happened that way, We were able to do it. All right, that's good info. And the broker to the stream. Add the broker to the stream. Yeah, for sure. Roughly 125 per week for 50 weeks is $60K. It's like the school teacher union's retirement is invested heavily in Section 8 housing. The reality is that the American dream is what we make of it. That is exactly right. Everything is what you make of it. People say that you can't really make it in this world today, like, you once did. Like, you could have an average job and then be able to buy a house and cars and do all that other stuff. They say you can't really do that today. You're right. You can't do it with an average job, but there's so many ways to make money nowadays. I don't know why more people aren't doing it. Like, you don't need just a nine to fiver. I mean, you can have a 9-to-5 job, but then there's so many other ways of making money online or just doing things. Like, even the picnic table was something very simple that I did for, fun yesterday. And it's a way of, of making money. There's all kinds of ways of doing it, but most people just, they do their 9 to 5 and then watch TV for the rest of the day or something. I don't know. But there's a lot of money to be made. Canadian homeowners with mortgages are getting screwed. What about take-home pay? $1,000 a week take-home is like $82,000. $1,000 a week is $52,000. There's only 52 weeks in a year. Is like 82,000 around here. I get it. The inflation rate last year was 8%, they say. I don't believe it. It seems much higher. I don't know. Well, I guess it depends on what you're looking at as far as inflation. Like, price inflation, that's a very difficult one to kind of like, pinpoint down to say this is exactly what it is. Because, really, like, price inflation is the symptoms of inflation. Inflation is the expansion of money and credit. Price inflation, or the prices, are the results of inflation. That's really what's going on. And so when you look at it that way, it's like how, like 8% last year comparatively to what it is this year, or comparatively to what it was back in the 80s, they don't call out the same numbers, right? You know, or I mean, they might call out the inflation number, but the way they adjust the mechanism to come up with that number, that inflation number, gets constantly adjusted and changed, right? So it's not like comparing apples to apples anymore. What I look more at is not necessarily where the prices are going, right? Because that's like the obvious thing that everybody looks at. It's more of like what the Federal Reserve is doing with their monetary policies, right? Now, are they in a contraction or are they in an expansion, right? Because if they're in contraction, you give it time and eventually that will find its way into the market. If you can contract the money supply, if you can contract the flow of credit, if you can contract this sort of banking system or the financial system, then give it time, and the people who are taking out loans to buy houses and cars and do all that other stuff will find it very difficult to do that. Those purchases will then start to slow down. Then we'll start finding the prices will have to reflect the slowdown in purchases that are happening out there. But all that takes time. And so when you look at like 8% inflation today, whether or not that's a comparable number to back in the early 80s or what it is going to be in the future is very relative, right? It's more about like the position in which that you are looking at it. Do you need to buy something that has gone up by 8%? I mean, I remember people saying something about eggs, how eggs are just like, you know, gonna drive them into the poorhouse. And I'm thinking, how many eggs do you possibly buy? Like, I mean, like, how could eggs actually cut that much into your budget? You know, like really, you know, I mean, most people, like, you know, they go off and buy a cup of coffee that costs more than a dozen eggs, right? You know, but you know, a lot of times when we see the information coming in, or we see the results of it, you know, price of a dozen eggs is up at $10 or something like that, and you're like, oh, it's just eating me alive, you know. Well, find stuff that hasn't gone up in price. And you know, it's easy to say that everything's gone up in price and then go look for the evidence of it. It's a lot harder to say, well, I'm going to go find me some really good deals out there. Like my father-in-law come bringing, or not my father-in-law, I'm sorry, my stepfather bringing 3 packs of chicken home, 3 for 1. He bought 1 package of chicken and got 2 more. He was like, dude, look at this, man. Look at all this chicken I got, you know. And I'm like, man, right on, good deal, right? It's because there was an oversupply and the price of chicken has fallen dramatically. Same thing with pork, right? So it's not everything that has gone up. Some stuff has come back down. Really, you have to look at, you know, where it is that the supply is really short. That's really where the prices are going to be moving up, is if there's not a lot of supply of it out there. But when it came to chicken and pork, I mean, hell, those are back down to some pretty cheap prices. So, and again, really, prices, inflation is caused by the consumption, right? The added consumption that takes place that then starts to pull more inventory out of the market. So like when new money comes in, the people who get that new money, so through stimulus checks or something like that, they start increasing their spending. But it's not just a matter of increasing the spending, it's all people, or at least a broad amount of people, spending at all channels, right? Because if you think about it, if you get a bunch of new money comes into the system, quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4, the people who had first access to the money started driving the prices up of the housing market, the stock market, the bond market, and all this other stuff because they had first access to the money. But the rest of the consumable items really didn't face the inflation that a lot of the other products or a lot of the asset prices had faced. Right? And even the Federal Reserve was like, hey, we failed to produce our 2% inflation target for the last, 10 years, basically since the start of quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that's because it wasn't money being handed out to the people that was then going in and consuming things at all fashions and all channels, right? It was just the people who had first access to the money, borrowing money and buying houses and going into the stock market and bond market and stuff like that. So now we have all this inflation going on, but we had a severing of the supply chain and a bunch of stimulus that ran out there and started buying at all channels at the same time. That was a very different scenario. And that was one of the reasons why we saw so much shortages happening, is that literally they severed the supply chain and then told people, here's a bunch of money, go clear out all the inventory. Now that the inventory's gone, boom, prices, right? You could have probably done it without even, you probably could have done it by just severing the supply chain, right? But unfortunately, you wouldn't have been able to get that like initial rush of people going out there and clearing out the inventory. So it would have taken time to clear out that inventory. People wouldn't have been in a panic mode as far as like over ordering or, you know, paying extra high prices for something because they didn't think that they were going to get it. Self-fulfilling prophecy of inflation expectation is very much a working tool of the Federal Reserve. If they can convince people that there is going to be inflation in the future, they will conduct themselves in a way that actually causes inflation to happen. So, you know, again, that's part of the credible threat theory. Wow, we got quite a few of you up in here, 144 of you. I was only going to do this for a half an hour, but, you know, this has been so much fun, I can't stop. All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Richie Mello, for the $5. Do you think immigration out of the U.S. is the best answer for young generations in America? Yeah, probably. If I was really young and didn't have any kind of commitments or tie downs or anything else going down, I would probably go and find one of the most industrious nations that I could find that had like nice scenery or something, like, you know, a nice environment or something to be in. The United States has basically, if you think about it from Cantillon's essay, right? So when you think about like when the new money comes in, the people who have first access to that money get to, you know, spend it at face value, that drives the prices up of everything, and then deprives the people at the end of the line, because not only has their wages not gone up, but all the prices of their standard of living or their cost of living has. So this, you know, this gap between the rich and the poor, that's going to continue to increase, right? I mean, there's like no real way of reversing that. So if that's going to continue to increase, you better be on the right side of the wedge. So if you're on the right side of the wedge, no problem, right? I mean, you can continue on and everything is going to be cool and you get to enjoy your life like normal. But if you're on the bottom side of that wedge, it's going to be a very difficult time, right? Trying to pull yourself up out of the streets, or trying to pull yourself out of poverty, or try and do anything where you didn't have any kind of advantages from the lifestyle that you had grown up in or something like that. That's going to be very difficult to deal with, right? It's not saying that there isn't going to be opportunities. I mean, we're in America, right? So there's opportunities all over the place. You just got to figure it all out. But the idea that you can just have like a normal life and be able to make it, like, you know, just working down at the average lumber yard, doing your thing, that kind of life is going to be very difficult to try and have one that is, say, meeting the same like qualities of life that, you know, had been experienced in the previous generations. So, I mean, yeah, if you were young and ambitious and had it going on, I mean, move to an industrious nation, or just make sure that you're on the right side of the wedge where the rest of the United States is diving into luxuries and you get to take part in that, you know. So as long as there's one of those two things. Love your optimism, but it's not that easy if you have a family. I have a family. I was 40 years old, broke, drunk, right? Had $20,000 in medical and credit card debt, right? Broken down vehicle, like all the stuff that you hear about people talking about how down in the, you know, down on their luck they were, you know, like that was me. Like I had all the stuff, right? I mean, all the stuff. And literally, I mean, I started with one thing. It was just like, man, you got to quit drinking. That was it. Like, I was just like, you stop drinking beer. Just stop drinking it, right? And, you know, so that was the step one, right? I quit drinking beer. And that gave me the ability to save a little bit of money, right? So as years went on, things just kept continually to get a little bit better. Now, one thing I definitely know is that I could have done that a hell of a lot earlier, right? I could have been like more ambitious earlier. I could have done a lot of things earlier in my life. But whatever it was that I was going through that had to be gone through in order for me to figure out what it is that I needed to do today, that's the way it went down, right? So it is easier said than done, but I mean, being 40 years old, broke, $20,000 in debt, drunk, had nothing, like all the stuff. And now I'm not saying that like I'm like killing it or anything else, but I got a house, I got some cars, not fancy cars. I just drive this car, my other cars, my wife has a car. We don't, like, I can pay my bills now, like stuff like that. So I've really turned stuff around, and it's really been like 7 years. It took me a long time, but really 7 years later, I'm doing a lot better from it, and I still raising the family, still doing the thing. Nobody owns anything but their mind, and even that is in the chopping block. Yeah, that is so very true. Everything, something that I really like, that Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. That book is really that one is pretty telling about the things that you think about. Like, you are right where you are right now, doing the things that you are doing because this is exactly what you have been thinking about. Like, people who are like bummed out about the position in their life, they don't like, what it is that they got going on. You got to think about what you're thinking about, man. And if you've been this way for a long time, you've been thinking this way for a long time. And that's really where the problem is. You are right where you are, doing exactly what you are doing because that is what you have been thinking about. And your thoughts will guide your future, and the feelings and the amount of effort, like the amount of attention and intention, right? Attention and intention that you put towards something will really change everything about your life, right? If you're putting a lot of attention to, like, my life sucks, my job sucks, my, whatever, my partner sucks, everybody is just like, if you think about it in that fashion and you roll that over and over and over and over again in your head, that's exactly the life that you will be living, right? Just like that. However, if you are thinking about business, if you are thinking about how to generate money, if you are thinking about the next sale, or if you're thinking about, moving, to another location, whatever, and you put those into your thoughts and you think about it regularly, and you think about the efforts that it would take to move, like to move out of this house, or maybe to take on a career or start a business or anything else like that, and you put those into your thoughts on a regular basis, and you imagine yourself doing those things, and you take on the feeling of actually having some of those things, it is really amazing on how it is that all of a sudden the reality of everything inside of your view starts to align to the way that you are thinking. It is truly amazing. It almost works like magic, but it's not magic. It's your awareness. It's the efforts that you are putting out there, the subconscious behaviors that you are doing, that has now got other people, other things in the world now attracted to you, right? And it's not that they're even necessarily attracted to you, it's that they have always been there, you just couldn't see it before. And now you see the opportunities because you've been thinking about the opportunities. Before, the opportunity was there, but you weren't thinking about it. You were thinking about how your life sucked and you missed out on these opportunities. That's literally how it goes down. People who say, man, that guy over there is really lucky. He's not really lucky. He's just, his mind is thinking in a way that provides him with a lot of opportunities, All right, we need to figure out a system to regulate boomers out of existence. A complete liability to society. Ugh, sounds scary, man. All right, I only hope the younger generation immigrate out of the U.S. Solar panels are quite lower in price. Was $1 per watt, now 80 cents. What I was saying on inflation, copper wire has more than tripled in price, but the copper index has not gone up. So it's either demand or greed or inflation, which must be at a higher rate than 8%. Do you think it's okay? So you're talking about the copper index, so like the copper commodity itself, but you're not necessarily thinking about the production, transportation, distribution, the warehousing, and inventory levels of copper wire. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that just went into it. I mean, you can't take the copper price and say, hey, this hasn't moved, and and then say that should dictate what the pricing of copper wire is. That's not accurate, right? And I can tell you right now, copper wire is coming down. I've seen the price of it come down dramatically over the last couple of months. In fact, we were talking about that on a live stream. There was another electrician who was saying that he had noticed the exact same thing, and it wasn't on the smaller packages either. It was on the big 250-foot packages that the price had come down. The smaller packages are still expensive. Why? Because they probably don't produce as many of those, and they're in higher demand when you don't need 250 feet, you only need 25 feet. So the price of those is going to be quite higher than if you buy in 250, which is the bulk, the commercial, the higher demand, the more sales are going to take place in a 250-foot roll. So the inventory levels of those is going to turn over quite dramatically, giving you access into the cheaper input costs, cheaper, trucking, cheaper warehouse, cheaper, just even the fact that people are, I don't know, like, to me, that's like the bullwhip effect, right? That's taking place right within it. If you have a lot of demand for copper and there's not a lot of people who are producing it, the price of it's going to shoot up as far as copper wire goes. But then all of a sudden you start producing a lot of this copper wire, 250-foot rolls being by far the most popular roll size to produce. All of a sudden there's a lot of inventory out there and the price comes down. But the other stuff still hasn't had that production going into it yet. So it still has elevated input price and, stuff like that going on. It makes sense to me. Like, I don't know, maybe it doesn't make sense to other people, but it makes sense to me. That's the way it is. All right. Houses here cost at least $250 per square foot to build. Ugh. All right. Hit the like button. Yes, please do. I'm drinking non-alcoholic beer. Well, good for you, Buckfitty 2000. I've been drinking the so over here at the Maritime, there's a place called the Maritime. They had Well-Being. It's a beer called Well-Being. Anyway, that one was pretty good. I think it was like a Hefeweizen flavor that they had there with that. And then the other one I've been drinking was the Athletic Brewing. But I found something. I like the flavors of the Athletic Brewing. I mean, I think they're really good. But I found something weird. If I drink more than two of them, it kind of makes me sick. Like, I feel like somewhat ill off of drinking them, and I don't know if it's like the sugars or something that's going on in there, but I love the flavor of it. I think it tastes great. Georgia higher end houses are $400 per square foot to build. The cool thing about life is the thing that you ask for will in time be asked of you. You can't exactly hide off grid anymore in the US like back in the day. Maybe Alaska. Yeah, maybe. Napoleon Hill, huge con artist. Okay. I mean, whatever. Some of the stuff that I got out of that book I thought was quite good. I mean, now I don't take everything to heart. I just take the information in and use what it is that I feel that I can use out of it. I mean, whatever. I mean, I didn't know he was a big con artist, All right. We wish we had 40 acres and a mule option today. My truck left and my dog broke down. Good country song theme. What countries would you recommend moving to? I don't know. I like living here, so I don't know where I would move to. I don't have I never really thought about moving away, so I couldn't tell you. Alcohol will kill all dreams. Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't move my family. Is everything, and our heritage is my identity here in the Carolinas. Alcohol was a subtle bastard in my life. No more. Yeah, I agree, man. It's really weird. Like, I wouldn't give up any of the good times that I had, like hanging out and, drinking and partying and doing all the other stuff. Like, I really enjoyed, some of the things that I, experienced, when I was drinking alcohol and drinking beer and stuff like that. But, But I look back on it and man, what a waste. What a waste of time, waste of money. Yeah. It was just a big waste. Yeah. Both Home Depots by me are out of OSB. They said these guys in the black SUVs came and bought it all up. Yeah, whatever. Liquid Death mineral water is pretty good. Yeah, I like that stuff too. The Liquid Death is pretty good. It's funny, like my youngest, Freddie, he likes to drink those, and I don't know if all of you've seen the Liquid Death cans, but they look like a malt liquor. Like it looks like a can of beer or something like that. And so here's my kid running around with like this death water. It's just funny looking. All right. The lime Liquid Death. Yeah, those are the good ones. Thank God my cabin construction is almost at the end. Right on. That's a cool project, a cabin. I should say it will kill dreams and your loved ones. Good for you, all-nighter. Yeah, absolutely good for you, all-nighter. Alright. Drink? I swear I'm not drunk. I work for the power utility. That's why I was saying on copper as a good power conductor. Oh yeah, for sure. What do you think about the nationwide Square outage? Heard Cash App is down too. Oh really? I missed that one. I don't know. Like I got Cash App, but I don't really use it for. I use it. I guess I did use it to send some money to a friend of mine. And then I used it to buy Bitcoin and stocks. But that's about all I use Cash App for. Yeah. Alright, I think Napoleon Hill has many good things to offer the average normie. Yeah, I do too. I thought the book was quite good. I didn't read the book, I listened to it. I listened to the audio of it, and I didn't quite get through all of it. But and I thought it was good, especially that part, what you're thinking about. Like what you are thinking about, what you are doing every day is because of the accumulated thoughts and feelings that you are having at any given moment, right? So that's what's funny about it, is just like, a lot of times people are like, man, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with my life. I don't, they have all these, questions or whatever. And it's just a matter of just like, hey, man, just change, just do it. It's like literally be a change and see yourself as the change. Think about yourself of what that change would be. How would that person be acting and feeling and behaving and doing all that other stuff, and just start doing it. And literally you can change everything about your life and everything that is going on with it just by simply feeling it and just being it. Like, I've said it before about this YouTube channel. When I started this YouTube channel, it was literally by accident. Like, I had the idea for the Uneducated Economist, but I didn't really have like this plan of starting a YouTube channel someday. It was literally one of my coworkers coming up and putting her fists on my desk telling me, hey, nobody understands anything you're talking about, and you need to start a YouTube channel because you're driving us crazy. That I literally, like a few minutes later, found myself in my car recording the introductory video to the Uneducated Economist. Like literally a few minutes later, I'm like, I am, right? And I went down there and I recorded the video and I went and uploaded it, right? And I started making videos. Nobody watched them. Like nobody watched the videos. I probably put out 20 videos before anybody was really ever watching any of them. And I would catch, like somebody's attention. I might get a subscriber, somebody might comment. But really, I didn't have anybody like following the channel until I started talking about housing and lumber and stuff like that. And I started catching a little bit more traction off of it. And the more I did it, the more I realized, hey, I can make these videos. Like I had trouble making videos every day, going to a point that now I have trouble not making videos every day. Like now I feel like I got to make out, like I did a video earlier today, I come out and do a live stream, right? It's just like all of a sudden YouTube is just like doing videos is really easy. It's something I just want to do all the time now. I just want to be part of it. So I eventually found myself to be a YouTuber, but I don't know when the change actually happened. And the more I look back, it was the very first day that I put a video out. That very first video, that introductory video, was the day I became a YouTuber, right? It was a matter of doing it, being consistent to it, feeling that change. At first, it was very uncomfortable. It was hard to put out videos. I didn't know what I was going to make a video about. I would do 50 takes on a video sometimes because I was like, no, man, they're just going to make fun of me if I say it like that, or if I, whatever, if I screw up something, I can't put out that video. I was too hung up on expectations of what people were going to think. I had to eventually let all that go too, right? Let go of the idea of people making fun of me, let go of the idea that, that I was talking economics in a space where I really didn't belong. I mean, who would want to listen to the Uneducated Economist about economics? That's really what I told myself. But I was like, you know what, just keep making videos, just keep doing it. And literally just changed everything about my life, like everything. And I mean, I don't even know. Like, I can't, like I said, I look back just like, well, when did you become a YouTuber? And I was like, oh, the way, the very first day. The first day I put that video out, that's when I became a YouTuber. Didn't feel like it, but as time went on, I eventually felt it. And now I feel like I've always been a YouTuber, It's just like, it finally just came out of me one day 7 years ago. Wow. Has it been 7 years? Oh my gosh, yeah, it has. In November, it will be 7 years. All right. What car are you sitting in? I'm sitting in a 98 Ford Explorer. We drink that at work. Up on poles. All right. Kind of mineral water tastes nasty on the diet. No, it doesn't all night. Our mineral water tastes good. All right. I don't even, where am I? Oh, my dice are in the Toyota. That's where they are. Have you ever paid attention to the car market? I wonder if car repos will become a big deal in the next few quarters. I thought that they were going to. Like, didn't we saw some pretty good increases in the foreclosures in the auto delinquencies. And then I thought repos were really going to start kicking in, but I haven't seen like dramatic like effects of the repo yet. Maybe it's happening in some areas, but like in my area, I still don't see it. Or at least like, like a whole bunch of used cars for sale or something like that. It still seems like it's pretty tight market on that. Although relieving, I guess. I put that wrong though. I still think his thoughts are relevant. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I do too. Like I said, I don't know about the con artist part of it. Maybe like a lot of people felt conned by the book or something. But I take what I want out of anything. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, even listening to some off the wall argument about something, it was just like, okay, well, I'll sit there and listen, and maybe you might drop a bit of nugget of information or something that I'm just not taking in as far as a perspective that I really need to. I'll listen, it doesn't mean I'll absorb it or believe it or anything like that, but but I'll listen to just about anybody. All right. Would it be possible for the government to confiscate 401ks and reimburse with treasuries and substitute a lack of buyers? Well, I guess that's a possibility. But that's a kind of a big what if. I don't know. Like, I don't know. That one, I mean, I guess that would be a possibility. But again, that's like, to me, that's kind of a big what if, All right, October 4th, 2 p.m. Eastern. Leave your phone in your truck. FEMA is supposed to ping everyone. October 4th at 2 p.m. Yeah, maybe I should take my phone and maybe I can give it to a buddy who's out on the middle of the river or something like that. And have him be out there with it. All right. A water in a can. All right. Why not build more homes using ICFs? Not much plywood is needed. Yeah, I don't know why they don't use more ICFs. We have a few of them that I've seen built around here. If you're not familiar with ICFs, it stands for insulated concrete form. So basically, it's real simple. It's two pieces of styrofoam connected with like maybe some wires or something, and it makes like it's a form for pouring concrete in. So you stack these blocks up and it's hollow in the middle, and then you fill it up with concrete. So it's already insulated, it's structural, it's pretty much ready to go. You just screw your drywall to it or screw siding to it on the other side. Pretty efficient too. Like, the homes are like incredibly energy efficient. I mean, I forget what like, the R value of like some of these ICF homes are something like R60 or some like ridiculous amount. And you think about it, like most wall insulation is like R21, so it's like 3 times the amount. And I could be wrong on that, but if I remember right, it was quite dramatic. But I don't know why more people don't use ICFs. You would think it would be a pretty easy and popular way to build at least build the exterior walls. If you apply yourself, you can do anything. I agree. I think you really can. I mean, I think that if as long as it's, I think you can do anything so long as it's within reason of your passion. Like, I mean, putting out the idea that you can do anything also kind of suggests that you could go into manipulative behaviors out there to try and get things done, which is, I mean, one could do that too. But really, if you want things to occur to you naturally, it's really just changing the way that you feel and think and bring yourself to the world. Like, if you act and feel and behave in a certain fashion, the world will respond back to you in that fashion, right? You basically get an exact reflection of what it is that you're feeling and thinking, right? And that's very difficult because a lot of people are like, no, I can think of $1 million and it doesn't show up. Well, you're not thinking about it properly, right? What you might be thinking of is $1 million, hoping that someday is going to show up and with a briefcase saying, here you go, here's your $1 million. And if it doesn't happen that way, you're thinking, no, that doesn't work. You can, but if you're thinking about earning $1 million and you have a bunch of people who have been hitting you up for like wanting to do business together or something like that, and you keep turning them down, you might be passing up that $1 million opportunity that you have been wishing for. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is how it goes down. Most people end up just missing out on opportunities because they just don't see them. Right? And a lot of times you're not seeing them because you're just not feeling it. You're not understanding, like, what it is that you need to be looking for out there in order to get those opportunities to come towards you. But once you have that understanding, the feeling, the belief, within you, and you start behaving that way, the world will reflect to that. It'll, like, I remember earlier in my career as a lumber salesman, whatever that is, right? But I was fairly new to working the counter, and because I was driving forklift mostly, but then I eventually found my way to doing sales, right? And so I'm doing sales, and it's difficult. You're kind of you stumble through them for the most part. You're not really good at it. Getting big sales is very difficult because you got to have the customer has to trust you and stuff like that. But you get kind of good at it, and I just remember looking at, like, because you could see all the sales numbers of everybody. You can see, how many transactions you've done, how many, how much profit you've made, how many, whatever. It has all the numbers there, right? And I remember thinking to myself, it was just like, wow, man, I would love to be one of these top salesmen who can sell, like, as much as these guys are selling, right? But they're selling huge house packages, and I'm ringing people up at the counter. But I'm looking at those numbers, and I thought, one of those numbers I could probably change is how many transactions I can do, right? Because you can see how many transactions, whether you're ringing up a $25,000 lumber package sale or you're ringing up, a 25-cent screw, right? The transaction is still a transaction. It's just one, right? So I thought to myself, okay, well, don't stress about the dollars. Don't stress about making the most. Don't do anything that. Just try and get the most transactions of anybody out there. And so that's what I put in my head. It was just like, just do a lot of transactions. Just do a lot of transactions. That's the only thing I said to myself. I wasn't like really looking for customers or anything. I was just telling myself, just do as many transactions as you can. And so I did that for a month. I just creamed everybody, right? I mean, just like my transactions was like 200 more than like the next guy behind me. I had just like smoked them all. And I thought and my numbers had gone up quite a bit too. Like, I didn't even think about like, how much money I was pulling in. I was just thinking of the transactions. Well, I jumped up to being like, third or fourth in place in sales or something. And it was just simply by looking at the transactions. I didn't care about the money. I didn't care about anything else. Only thing I focused in on was just doing how many transactions I could. And that started doing so much more. Like, all of a sudden I had like, the managers of the stores, coming up and they're like, hey man, really killing it there, whatever. And they started giving me opportunities to take on more sales and being at the, contractor desk and doing other stuff. So like, I didn't even really try to do the money part of it. I was just trying to do transactions. That's it. And that carried me into probably where I am today, the position that I am now, by simply motivating myself in that fashion, as opposed to this like trying to earn a bunch of money or something. All right. Yep. As you think you will be. All right. So glad I came across your channel a year ago. Going on 4 months, no alcohol. Man, that is so awesome. Out of fishing 333, dude. I love hearing that, man. That's the greatest comment I've seen all day. All right. 4 months alcohol. You definitely helped me. I am sure so many others. Thank you, man. Thank you. You did it. I mean, this was you. You know it, right? I mean, it was within you. You wanted it. It was just, seeing somebody else and hearing somebody else's story motivated you. All right? It wasn't me. I didn't do it. It was you. All right? But thank you, man. That's what I like, man. That's what this is all about, Man, that was awesome. All right. We the people are the government. It's our representatives. They are looking up. Yep, absolutely. Thanks for your content. Well, thank you, the bartender mechanic. All right. The system is in the process of breaking us all. I see you guys later. Wife duty. All right, Daniel C. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, man. Thanks for all those comments, too. I appreciate it. Not when they derive their just powers from we the people, right? All right, lumber is only $4.99 per thousand. It's down, and you think about it, $4.99 per thousand. Is that what it closed at today? I saw it was right around the 500 mark, but you got to think $4.99. That's like 2017 prices, 2018 prices, and that's also with the added input cost of rail delivery to Chicago from the Pacific Northwest. It used to, the lumber future prices used to be to a hub up in the British Columbia area. That's where the lumber contracts were for. Now they're with the rail delivery going out to Chicago. So you can imagine that the lumber prices are really down right now, considering what they have been in the recent years. Like, I wouldn't hesitate. If you need lumber, now's the time, right? All right, you would make a great college teacher. My master's program had professors with real life experiences. They wove into different subjects, and the classes were interesting. Just a thought. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, 345 Farm. That's really cool. I would love to do something like that. Like, I would love to be able to, like, say, teach a course. I even want to build a course here for the YouTube channel, or at least for the Uneducated Economist, something that I can, sell, even something that's cheap, but something that I can, sell you guys. I mean, I don't have anything to sell you, so it would be nice to have something I could sell. And I think a course would be a good one to do. I think my hang up on it is like, I literally don't know what to make the courses about or how. Like, the way that I learned economics, just self-taught and just kind of gathering information from wherever and whenever, it didn't really give me any kind of base to understand, like, step 1, step 2, step 3 to understanding the economy. I just kind of, like, literally I started studying the economy with what's a mortgage-backed security, what's a credit default swap. Those were the 2 questions that I asked Google, and started like researching from there. So I didn't even start with like, here's a dollar, this is what fiat currency is and stuff. I went right into mortgage-backed securities and credit default swaps, I mean, that's how I started learning. But yeah, I would love to teach classes. I think that would be fun. New hotels in California are going bankrupt. How can a hotel real estate investment trust owners go bankrupt, but the hotel operators the same as the norm? The same as norm. Yeah, I guess that's the investment part of things on it, right? You keep the business up in operation. Like I remember, when the company that I worked for was going bankrupt and the receivers came in, the receivership. Here we had a bunch of managers, right, who were running the store who had no clue about what it is that they were doing, right? The store is completely bankrupt. It's now owned by the bank, right? And we as employees are still working. Like, how is this possible? Like the owner and everything else, he's out of the game now, and it's completely taken over by these managers who have no clue of what it is that they're doing, and they're trying to tell us to make, like, we got to make really good decisions around here about what it is that we're doing. And it was just like, you don't think that we as sales know what we're doing? It's like what they meant by really good decisions is don't buy anything and sell everything that you already have in the store. That's a good decision, right? That's what they meant by that. I didn't pick up on that until later, but you know yeah. Anyway, moving on. What's up, economic professor? That's cool. What's happening, Eric? All right. I tried to type with some face to this. What fashionist? What is that? I don't even know what that word is. All right. Concrete prices are up too. Yeah, they are. October 4th is the great lockdown coming. Really? I'm I'm gonna go to the beach that day. All right. If you guys haven't noticed yet, small REITs, real estate investment trusts are quietly going bankrupt. When will the larger REITs declare bankruptcy as well? They are refinancing into 7% interest rates. Wow, man. All right. Here we go. Uneducated Economist. Hunter Biden for president 2024 and 8 ball for every American. Wow. Well, I've never done coke before. I mean, I guess there's always a first. Yeah. Maybe if I got to do it with Hunter Biden, I would try it. All right. Is that all you want? Is candy bar? I can ring you up. Congrats out of fishing. Oh, that's somebody up there, isn't it? All right. Very good out of fishing. Keep us updated, please. What did out of fishing say? Where's that one at? Did I miss a comment? Oh, no, we were talking about the alcohol. I'm sorry. That's right. Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't forget. So many comments. All right. All right. The smart ones are stopping distributions to build their cash position. Simon, you're new into going forward. Should be that amazing fart you ripped earlier video. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. I think it was something in the seats, but I saw the comment earlier and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? All right. Straight gas, brother. Keep ripping. Okay. All right, I'm still not 100% on CDSs. Need a better understanding. Yeah, on CDSs, the credit default swaps, those ones, that's a really interesting because it's like an insurance policy for an investment. I mean, that's the easiest way to kind of understand it as far as I understand it anyway. So, like if you have somebody who's purchased a mortgage-backed security, then they can buy a credit default swap to go with the mortgage-backed security. So if the mortgage-backed security fails, the credit default swap kicks in and then the investor is made whole again. So it's literally like an insurance policy for your investment. Now, something that I found very interesting about it is that the credit default swap, you don't actually have to own the investment. You can just buy the credit default swap and pay a premium on it. It's like making, whatever to keep it going. But then if you have whatever investment that credit default swap was, covering, if it fails, then you get paid, right? So there's a lot of trickery that happens within this credit default swap market because really it's not, from what I understand, it's not the most regulated or like clearly understood market out there. Like it's kind of in the shadow banking system kind of thing. And so when we think about like these credit default swaps, something that I found very interesting is that these credit default swaps, when you have a company that's about ready to fail, the people who own those credit default swaps can go to those companies and say, hey, we got these damn insurance policies that are about ready to kick in when you fail, but you're holding on. What would it take to go ahead and get you to fail? Like, just to go ahead and give it up now so that you go bankrupt instead of trying to hold on or trying to renegotiate or whatever, just to go ahead and shut down operations. What would it take for that to happen so that these credit default swaps that I have will kick in and I can get paid? Like, this sort of scenario goes down. And then it also happens the other way too, where the issuer of the credit default swap might go to a company saying, hey, you're about ready to fail and we got all these credit default swaps that we've sold that cover your company in case it fails, but they're going to expire here in a couple of months. What would it take to continue operations? Like, what can we do to keep you going for a while so we don't have to pay out on all these credit default swaps? That sort of thing happens as well, and it's pretty crazy to think. All right. How you feel about Liberty Safe pulling a Bud Light? How do you feel about Liberty Safe pulling a Bud Light? I don't know what that means. You just answered your question. Okay. State Farm announced they're discontinuing INS for business, insurance for business, something like that. Huh. Class on mortgage-backed securities. Yeah, mortgage-backed securities, that's an interesting one. Guys, what time is it? Oh, okay. I'm going to give it like another 10 minutes and I'm going to have to jet out of here. Let's see here. Mortgage-backed securities, we should really find somebody that we can interview here on the channel who could really break down mortgage-backed securities and what goes on with those things. Because really, like, the mortgage-backed security market, this is how mortgage interest rates find their level, and it's kind of it's hard to wrap your head around because the Federal Reserve was buying into a lot of these mortgage-backed securities, right? So when the Federal Reserve is buying these mortgage-backed securities, what they are doing is they are creating an artificial buyer for it, and then other people see that the Federal Reserve is printing money and buying these things, and they try to front run the Fed. Excuse me. So now you have a lot of people who are participating in the mortgage-backed security market. Not only is the Fed doing it with the quantitative easing programs, but then you also have the market who is also participating in this as well. So like a mortgage-backed security, like the easiest way to understand it is if you took a box and you threw a bunch of mortgages in it, right? And then you sold that box off to an investor. As all those mortgages are paying, getting paid back, the investor is, making their profit off of the interest rates that they are paying, right? So that's like the simplest way to understand it. It's like a box full of mortgages. Now it gets pretty complicated because really what they do is they hack these mortgages up and put them into different tranches. And so these tranches you can invest in particularly, right? So, here you buy into the highest tranche or the lowest tranche depending on how much return you want on the yield. The highest tranche obviously is the safest place, has the lowest return on it. The bottom tranche is the riskiest place, and it's most likely going to pay the highest interest rate on it, right? And so understanding that it's busted into these different, levels can get very complicated on itself, right? But really, if you just kind of understand it for the box of mortgages that are being sold off to an investor, when the Federal Reserve is buying these things, it drives the yields down and the price of those things up because of the huge market participation that goes into it. Something very interesting that started taking place when the Federal Reserve started moving into their quantitative tightening is that everybody said that when the Federal Reserve dumps out these mortgage-backed securities, you're going to see the interest rates shoot through the roof, which totally makes a lot of sense. I mean, here they are buying an insane amount of these mortgage-backed securities for the last few years with the quantitative easing program, dropping interest rates or bringing them down very low. The moment that they start selling these things or allowing them to go back out there into the market, they're no longer participating in the purchasing of it. The price of those things are going to fall and the yields are going to rise. And that's exactly what we've seen take place. Now, what I found very interesting about this whole mortgage-backed securities or the mortgage rates is that the moment that the Federal Reserve made the announcement that they were going to start raising rates and that, it was going to happen at the next meeting or whatever, mortgages took off ahead of the Federal Reserve, right? And the very first raising of interest rates from the Federal Reserve shot the mortgage rates up to about 8% or so. And then they plateaued off, right? I mean, they fluctuated a little bit, but as the Federal Reserve kept raising the Fed funds rate, the mortgage rates were just staying flat. Like they just, they shot up in that, October of last year, and they kind of just remained elevated ever since. And yeah, they did fluctuate, but not really like keeping pace with the Fed funds rate that, kept, stepping up ever increasingly higher. The mortgage rates just stayed, kind of plateaued out. Now, the reason for that is that as the Federal Reserve was dumping these mortgages out into the market again, the market was backing away from purchasing homes. And they were backing away from rolling over their old mortgages into new mortgages. So now right there, that shrank the pool of mortgage-backed securities out there. The fact that people weren't taking out new mortgages, or less people were taking out mortgages, and the in the pool of mortgages that were being refinanced was also diminishing, right? How's it going, brother? So these were the reasons why there was less mortgages in the markets. Because you think about it, when a mortgage gets refinanced, what they do is they destroy the first mortgage and then reestablish a new one, right? Well, during that time, that was giving the Federal Reserve the ability to buy these mortgage-backed securities, because people were, basically, just paying off the first one and reestablishing a new one. That gave the Federal Reserve plenty of mortgage-backed securities to buy, right? And the fact that people were purchasing them at the same time, these houses. Well, now we're not sitting in that same situation, right? So the pool of mortgages are starting to diminish due to the fact that people aren't refinancing and there's less homes being purchased. So the Federal Reserve can dump out their mortgages into a smaller pool of mortgages that are out there, or mortgage-backed securities out there for sale. Now, when the investors are looking at it, because believe it or not, there are investors out there who do want to buy these mortgage-backed securities for the fixed income, position that they get out of it. So when the investors are looking at that, saying, oh man, I ain't touching this, the Federal Reserve is dumping out all these mortgages, the price of those things are going to fall and the yields are going to rise, right? So the last thing that an investor wants is to see his investment fall in price, right? Well, if you buy a bond, like a mortgage-backed security or a treasury bond, and the yields rise and the prices fall, that means selling that bond off would come at a loss unless you held on to it for maturity. So the last thing the investor wants to see is yields rising and the prices falling. But if the yields are plateaued out and the prices aren't going down any further, the investor might look at that and say, like, holy crap, that fixed income right there, that's my ticket, that's my price, that's where I want to be at. And they start, pouring into the market, start at least, supporting the market. And that's what I believe actually happened with the mortgages that we are seeing here in the United States. That's why they shot up back in October and plateaued off, is because when the Fed started dumping these mortgages out there, the whole market said, hey, we're not going to be producing these things. We don't have a whole lot of sellers or buyers of mortgages, and producers of mortgage. How would I say that? We don't have a lot of home buyers being able to produce mortgages, right? And we don't have a whole lot of refinancing happening at the same time. So with this little shrinking of mortgage-backed securities, or the pool of it, that's what gave the market the ability to plateau out on 8% interest and not go any higher than that. Even though everybody said that when the Fed was dump out those mortgages, we were going to see like 15% mortgages and stuff like that out there. But really, the investors would never have let that happen. They were like, man, once you get to about 8, 9, 10% on these things, man, that's my ticket. I'm in it. I'm all over it. And that's what supported the mortgages. They didn't need the Fed. I think I got that right. Did you guys understand that? Did I say that right? Anyway. All right. I know I'm teasing Simons. He's so lovable. All right. Should I try Simon? May improve my driving a bit. What are we talking about? I already forgot. All right. Oh, Coke. Coke can be summed up as the first one is fun. Everything after that is blah maintenance. Yeah. It's probably, I've never done that stuff. I mean, I know a lot of people probably would not believe me about that, but I don't know how the hell I managed to just say no thank you for that stuff, but I did a lot of other things. All right, definitely not an A+ lifestyle choice for long haul. Works for a few years max. Snowblind Friend by David Allen. Coke was a good song. You guys are all into it. All right. Thanks for the reminder. Trump's going to come back and have credit card relief similar to the college student loan relief. Credit card relief? That sounds like Obama style stuff. Is he going to take on some cues from the old Obama administration? All right. Whatever happened to the Balanced Budget Act of the federal government budget like we had in the 90s when Bill Clinton was president and we had surplus every fiscal year? Okay. I mean, was that a good thing that was happening there? Because, I remember around that same time, and I'm not trying to, because I'm not much into politics and stuff, but, I remember during the Clinton administration that he was able to balance the budget so that we could, make our payments and didn't take us out of debt, right? We were just kind of at a balanced budget. We weren't going into deficit spending. Hacked the hell out of the military. We had the U.S. coal bombed. We had the World Trade Centers bombed. We had the embassies in, what was it, Sudan, Africa, something like that. Those were bombed all during the Clinton administration, and I don't remember him doing anything about it. At all. Maybe some token bombs were dropped or something. But I do not remember anything actually happening because of that. So, but at least we had a balanced deficit, we didn't have the deficit spending going on, right? A few years later, we get attacked again. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to be political or anything else in it, but I don't think that was exactly the best time in the world to be cutting back on military. All right, Matt the mortgage guy would probably be a good guess for the mortgage. Didn't I have Matt on here? I'm pretty sure I had Matt the mortgage guy, yeah. He was or maybe I was on his show. That's what it was. I was on his show a long time ago. He's a nice guy. That dude is cool as hell. All right, the security portion of a mortgage-backed security is the pool of mortgages pooled to reduce default risk. The reverse, yeah. Absolutely. Let's see. The reverse repo market is running out of money, liquidity. Oh, no, guys. I'm sorry. I got to go. My phone's about ready to die. I'm at 5%. This was so much fun. I would sit here and just keep talking, but I got to go because I don't have any phone left and I can't really see what's on my screen anymore. So, all right. Uneducated Economist, thank you so much for being here. Thank you very much for hitting that thumbs up button. We have 109 of you watching. We had $10 in super chats. Thank you so much for supporting the Uneducated Economist. I really appreciate everything that you have ever done for me. It's really changed my life. I'm serious about that too. And, out fishing, man, go for it. Uneducated Economist, you let me know.